So yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a long time now. I used to feel like I was always the youngest one in the room, and now I often find find that that's not the case, which is a good thing. I've kind of just learned a lot the hard way, so don't claim to have it all figured out. Certainly, uh, even with that nice introduction from Molly, but definitely happy to help and share ideas. Look forward to hearing what other people have to say. Um, and we kind of sort of have like this entrepreneurial sickness. So we do a lot and I sort of can't help it. So I'll try to talk about some of the different things we've done and what I've learned about them. And feel free to steer me in whatever direction, people are interested in. But as Molly said, I started out commercial fishing. I had no connection to the seafood industry, but I was really drawn to it. I still am. I really love it. Um, I do this during the week and I go fishing for fun on the weekend. And I'm still, after all these years, I'm still just like really compelled by the idea of going out fishing, catching a fish, and then eating it, or especially sharing it with my neighbors, my family. So I kind of knew in my 20s I want to transition from working on the boats to being in the industry. Didn't know much about the industry. Took a lot of different jobs. It became really clear that where I wanted to kind of find my niche or build a company was as the guy on the docks working directly with the boats, and providing a service to the commercial fishermen. So around here, it's different even up and down the East Coast. So I imagine it's different all over the country and all over the world. But around here, basically any public pier, I can pull up a box truck and unload a commercial fisherman. Um, and we have, I think it's similar around the country, but some of these commercial fishermen, outside my office here, I'm looking at a 76-foot, steel scallop boat. That's a large boat, but there's people in Massachusetts who are digging steamers and razor clams by hand and everything in between. If you're a school teacher, you can go get a striped bass permit for I think like $35, and you can be a commercial striped bass fisherman, even fishing from shore. Um, so I think that's really cool. But and that's where I saw an opportunity to build a business in the early days. Around here, it's a bunch of really old, really well-established companies. They're impressive companies. I have nothing against them, but I couldn't just sort of like walk onto the fish pier and say, I'm going to take that highliner over there and work with them. But we saw an opportunity in 2008 was when all these regulations were really starting to get teeth. And with those regulations come sustainable fisheries, which is great, but it also comes a cost. And what I was seeing was, that cost was sort of like alienating or disenfranchising the smaller boats because those costs are largely fixed, right? So if it costs me $10, which it actually does, it costs approximately $10 to process a transaction, right? There's obviously variable costs, the more pounds, the more variable labor, but fixed costs, just like, if I cut a $5 check or a $500,000 check, the check costs the same amount, the envelope costs the same amount, the stamp costs the same amount, it takes the same amount of time to print and do it. And same with reporting the catch to the government. It doesn't take long to hit extra zeros. It takes long to log into the glitchy government database they give you. So we saw an opportunity, given the landscape of the industry and what was going on, that like these larger companies didn't want to deal with these small transactions. We were like, hey, maybe there's a way to use modern technology, sort of right time, right place, the right time, with the internet coming on and iPhones and everything. Um, so opportunity to create some web-based software to get in our idea was maybe we can get really, really, really good at unloading a lot of small boats and gather up enough of them to where we're not really pissing off the big guys, but we can get enough market share, enough throughput to create meaningful infrastructure, uh, to where we could have enough infrastructure to have an impact. Um, and I will say, so I read through all the stuff on the that Molly provided on the situation in Kauai, and um, I'll share my story. I think the challenge, right? And I'm sure you're all aware of this. You're living it. It's like you kind of need scale to have impact, right? Like you need a forklift if you're going to move 2 pallets a day or 30 pallets a day. Like you need a forklift and that has a cost. And then like you need your OSHA certificate and all this like crap that goes along with that and on down the line. So hopefully my story can help, or at least like some concepts and ideas. But like the kind of unfortunate reality is like you need, at least in Massachusetts, like to fillet fish, you need like refrigeration and a HACCP plan and like a 3-bay sink and a hand wash sink and all that stuff. So not to be a downer, but we were able, anyway, our story is we're able to kind of scale that infrastructure and scale the supply. And at the end of the day, our job is to match supply and demand. And that's kind of like what's led to everything Red's Best does now. And that's where maybe I can be helpful to people in Kauai or, to anybody else, is because we take this really seriously, right? Like, as you all know, there's much easier ways to make money in this world than to do what we do. But I do it because I still love doing it, and the people I employ love doing it. They have really hard jobs. So we take that responsibility to the fishermen, as Molly saw, these relationships we have. We take that really seriously. Are we always perfect? No, but like it's very clear that we care and we put a lot of thought into it. And that thought and like living this over the last decade has led to what I think are some sort of like innovative ways to better match supply and demand. At the end of the day, my role in the supply chain, I'm just matching supply and demand, right? So the first part of the story, I need to efficiently aggregate supply. I sort of gave you that. Happy to sort of share more of the software story. But that was like the initial growth. That's aggregating supply, and then it's matching that supply with demand. And the best way is to do that. And that's where it gets like really in depth. Just again, we put a lot of thought into it. Um, uh, you know, so that's I'll say one thing that's really cool about our fisheries around here is they're very diverse. So like every day in our warehouse, we have periwinkles, which are like little snails, and like conchs and giant bluefin tuna and cod and all sorts of ground fish. Like we have really, really, really diverse species around here. Again, unfortunately I haven't been to Hawaii, Molly. Um, so I don't know. Although I did spend some time in the Pacific Northwest, more up in Alaska, but we're fishing out of Gig Harbor, so love it up there. But we've really, really diverse species, and it goes to everybody in the society or the community and really the country. So like on any given day, we're selling like some super high end, like white tablecloth stuff. And we're selling some, some like high volume, low price stuff to the like poorer neighborhoods. And so I feel really good about that. But I guess it's a longer story about like how we match supply and demand. The general kind of concept that we focus on, it's always about flexible consumption. I don't know how much that applies like specifically to the ahi, but for us, I think that's really important thing for us. And whenever we're thinking about anything, like if you go on our website, you'll see all this crazy stuff we're doing, but like without a doubt, the common denominator in everything that Red's Best does, it's about flexible consumption and flexible demand, right? So we have our supply coming in, and when that demand is fixed, we have misalignments of supply and demand, and that's a situation where the customer is in a high demand, low supply scenario, their price goes up. The fishermen that we care about and represent in a high supply, low demand scenario, their price goes down. So we spend most of our time thinking of ways to like have flexible demand. But so that comes in a lot of forms with like, we do big like institutional food service fish of the day programs. So like Harvard University buys around 2,000 pounds of fillet a week. We fix the price, but they let us choose what type of fish they get every week. It's amazing, right? We have our own retail markets and farmers markets where we've set a precedent of like, don't think you're going to come here and demand haddock, because if we land hake, you're getting hake. And people like that, right? That's intuitive, especially when you can kind of like highlight the fishermen and tell the stories and show like your grit and your connection to the resource, right? Like who's not going to eat what a commercial fisherman tells them to eat, who's going to eat what like Costco tells them to eat, that's a tougher sell. But when So that's been good. The last thing I'll say, specific to the ahi situation, we've had a lot of, so we have bluefin tuna, which is how I met Molly. She did a lot of great stuff, the tuna fisheries on the East Coast. But it's seasonal and it's high volume and they're really big fish and they're tough to work with. So we spent a lot of time in the last like 2 or 3 years now looking into super freezers. So the thing with tuna is you put it in a normal freezer, at least this is my experience. You put it in a normal freezer, it's going to turn brown. It doesn't last. If you can process that tuna and freeze it, we bought these crazy freezers. We have negative 120-degree freezers. You put it in that and it's like better than fresh. I used to always just go out and catch a fish, bring it home, eat it raw or crudo or whatever. I'll never eat raw fish again that hasn't gone through these super freezers. So that's the first thing that came to mind, Molly, when I was thinking about the stories I was reading here. So I'll leave it there. Sorry if I went a little over my allotted time, but hopefully it's helpful. And we're like really open door policy. I want to put that out there. Like I'm really easy to find. I'm jared@redsbest.com. I do not claim to know everything. Like I'm just sharing what I know today, and I hope to get feedback and ask questions. I just, and we're not like a response to something that our predecessors were doing wrong. I just really look at it like I feel really blessed to live in a place where our community puts so much effort in having sustainable, renewable fisheries and clean oceans, and just trying to constantly rethink this to like just make it a little bit better every day and more resilient, right? Like the like food security you mentioned, Molly, is something that's super important and high on my mind. So thank you.